All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let people come in here, and hopefully we'll get some more people in here to do some of the interactive part. So this is a continuation on the NodeMCU series. We're going to move into working on the web UI. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got here. So we're going to start with kind of this basic template here, and if you watched the last video, I mentioned that I'm not going to dive into explaining the like Bootstrap and things like that. We're going to use Bootstrap, and we're also going to use jQuery, which I need to toss that in here as well. Down here at the end of everything. Excuse the dog. Okay, I think it's done. Nope. Now I think it's done. Okay. So we've got jQuery in here. We're going to use Bootstrap 4. And let's go ahead. I'm going to load up the final product so we can take a look at what we're going to be building here. So we need to set up this area. So this will be a column and this will be a column. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and we're going to make a container. And we'll make it fluid so it spans the whole screen. And then let's build a row. And then we're going to build some columns here. We're going to make this one half the page, and then because Bootstrap 4 allows you to do something a little different here than Bootstrap 3 did, all we need to do is give this a class of call for column, and it will figure out what it needs to be based on what this one is. So it's the equivalent of making this one 6 also. Save that and refresh. Of course, there's nothing in there, so we won't see anything yet. Let's go ahead and put our little title here. Save that. There we go. And the little light is just a span. Using the Bootstrap class pull right. And inside there is just a div. With an ID of light. Now we need, let's see, we have one extra CSS resource here, which is the CSS I made for the light. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file. Call it light.css. And I'm going to paste this in here and go over it fairly quickly. So we just set up the size of the light. I give it a border, make it completely round, set it to inline block, and give it a little margin so it doesn't bump up against the top, as you can see here. Then we've got two classes that basically handle the state of the light. The on is then yellow, and off is grayed out with a little bit of an inset shadow to kind of make it look like a ball or a light or a bulb, that is, which you can see here. So we'll come back to that, but at least now we've got that in there. So if I save this, we should see the light. There you go. So because it's neither on nor off at the moment, it's only taken the initial values here for CSS. The next piece we need to add in here is then the button that we're going to toggle. And that is just a button element. And we'll just put a value in here, but we're going to dynamically change that later. I'm going to give an ID. We're going to call this toggle. That's how we're going to refer to it with the jQuery. And give it a Bootstrap class of button danger. So it starts as red. Not 100% sure why it doesn't have the nice round thing going on, but I'm going to move on because that's not really important. Next, we're going to build out our little log over here, which is just a table. We're just going to build out the top portion, and we'll dynamically fill in the rest later. And depending on how long this takes to set up, I may break this up into two live videos, but we'll see. Let's save that. Take a look. So we have our table. We need to give it a little bit of pizzazz here. So, using Bootstrap, define it as a table, make it bordered. Make it small so we can fit some more stuff in there, and make it striped, which, there you go. Now let's take a look at, before we start adding some functionality to this, we'll take a look at what actually controls the light. Right now it's off because I've removed all the old stuff I moved, so that file that we were using to make the light turn on, it's not present. So we need to create that really quick. And that was just a file we called data.txt. And that just takes a value. So let's go ahead and put in the value 1, and hopefully our light should turn on. Yep, there we go. So if I change this to 0 and save it, there you go. So we'll turn it on for now. One thing we're going to have to do is make sure that that file is writable, because we're going to access it with PHP. And right now, creating it right here, it's not going to be writable, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. So now that should be writable. All right. So the main functionality we want here, and we'll do this part first, because it may not be, or the log is less important. So if we don't get the log in this amount of time, then we can do that one later. But at least we'll get the light up and running. So we're going to come down here to the bottom and toss in some JavaScript. And let's go ahead and do a onReady. And set up our click event. So we're going to target the toggle element, which is the button, and catch it when it clicks. And run an anonymous function when that happens. Now what we need to do, we need to know what the state is of the light and the button itself. So I'm going to add an element or an attribute, a data attribute here. Just call it state. And right now we'll set it to 1. So 1 being that it's on. And let's go ahead and grab that state. And this, if you're not familiar with jQuery, I'm not going to dive too far into jQuery, but basically we're saying by this we're accessing the element that is clicked. And we're going to get the data state value. And just to test that, let's go ahead and we will change the HTML in the button to whatever the current state is. So save that, upload it. Yeah, that failed. Give me a second while I figure it out. Oh. This would be why. No, that was not where. Oh, we're totally missing, let's see, the function. There we go. All right, sorry about that. All right, so we know we're getting the state here. So that's good. We're going to manipulate that later. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Now we need to access the data file. And to do that, we're going to need to create PHP file that we're going to access with Ajax. And we'll just call this toggle. And let's see. Let's go ahead. We're going to create some little PHP block here. And what we're going to need to do is open that data text file. And FP stands for file pointer in this case. We're going to open it for write. We'll go ahead and throw a die in there. And let's see. We want to write the state of the button. So actually I had that backwards. Whatever this data state is going to be the next state. So we're going to be, when we click the button, we're going to send a 1, which would turn it on. So we'll have to send that using a CGI variable. And let's see, which would be, we'll just call it state. So we'll do F write and the file pointer and get state. And to make sure that that happens, let's go ahead and enclose this in an if is set. Get state. And let's go ahead and echo that state just for some reference if we need it later. All right, save that. Pop back over here. Now we're going to run some Ajax to just basically run that there. So using jQuery. This isn't going to take very much. You pass it a URL, which in this case is going to be toggle.php. And we're going to send the state, and that will be equal to the current state, which again is actually kind of backward. It's going to be the opposite of that, where it's not really the current state, it's the current state we're changing it to. Method get, this actually doesn't even really need to be there, but it's in my cheat sheet that I'm looking off of that I made earlier. So save that. So when the button's clicked, it's going to run toggle.php, send the state. So it's going to open data.txt for write, and overwrite that file with the state that we sent it and spit that state out so we can see it if we look in the developer tools. So refresh. Let's go ahead and nope, inspect. So hopefully when we hit this, we should see, there it is. And there's the state. So the state was sent. You can see it here in the headers. And it echoed out 1. And we didn't see any error, so the writing of the file must have worked. But let's test that by opening this up, changing this to 0. Turn off the light, yep. And then hitting our toggle button. And this should turn it back on. Yep, all right, so it's being written. Excuse me. But right now we're sending it a static value of 1, so every time we hit this, it's just going to continue to turn it on. That doesn't do us any good. So let's see. I want to create a function that will make sure we have the current state of the light. And we're going to use this in a second. And we're going to grab the button. We're going to save the jQuery object for that button. And get the light. We're going to use some of these a little bit later. And yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. Now, what we want to do is we're going to run some more Ajax to read that file and find out what the value is. So go back over to toggle. We're going to create another if statement. And basically, these if statements are going to determine, or well, it gives us an ability to reuse this file for multiple purposes. So we'll call this one current. And we're going to say the file is data.txt. And file pointer equals open file. And we're doing it for write this time, or for read this time, and we'll do an or die. And we're going to go ahead and just echo out the value of that using the fgets function from PHP. And we'll go ahead and close the file. So if we were to access this file, shouldn't get anything. However, if I send current, we'll get what the current state of the button is. So now we're going to use that over here, and run our Ajax. Give it the URL. And then we're going to run an on success. And so this the value that we spit out here is going to come back here to us with this data variable. So let's set the button state. Or actually, let's check to see what that is. If data is equal to 1, then let's change the data state, or the data attribute state, to 0. Else change it to 1. Go back to our page, refresh. No, we're actually not doing anything with, we haven't run current state. So let's first get the current state when, oh, and I want to take this, sorry, I want to take this function out of the onReady. So let's go ahead and onReady, let's run current state. And we're going to go ahead, I'm going to do a set interval. Run that current state again every second. Let's spit data out to the console log here and just make sure. I gotta see why that's not switching. Oh. This needs to be a string. There you go. So now we're turning the light on and off. So that is the most basic portion of this here. Then we can get into manipulating the way the button looks and the light looks. So like, since we had set up the light element up here, let's go ahead and access that. Let's add class on and remove class off. And we'll just flip these around down here. Maybe. Oh, of course, I capitalized on. It's the little things. There you go. So you can see both the light image is turning on and the light itself is turning on. Okay, cool. So now let's do the same, only with the button. And these are just Bootstrap classes. And then we'll just flip these around down here. All right, cool. Then the last thing we'll do is change the label of the button. Or, well, the HTML. So there's that. Cool. Now let's take a look at the log portion. I think we can actually fit that in here. That went quicker than I thought. So we're going to want to, when the button is clicked, we want to do something with the log. So in our Ajax here, we're going to grab some data from PHP. First, we need to actually create the log, so we're going to add a file. We're just going to call this log.txt. And this can be empty for now. We're going to go ahead and need to do the same thing we did with data to the log to make it writable. And let's see. We'll go ahead and just copy this and reuse it. We're going to open the log, and we're going to open this for appending instead of just writing. So we're going to be adding to. And let's save the state. And a variable there. Let's get the IP address of the person viewing. Alright, and then let's get the date using the date function with PHP, and we'll format it as such. So year, the full year, or the 4-digit year, and hour, minute, and the can't think of what it's called, AM or PM. Right, so we have that. Now let's go ahead and write that info. Or actually, this is for something else. We'll get to that. Let's create our message, so to speak. This is going to be the message that's spit out into the log file. So we want the state, concatenate, and we're going to use dashes as a delimiter so we can parse this in a second. Do the IP. And the date. And then we will add a return a new line so that it bumps down the next time. Now we'll go ahead and write. So fwrite. And the message. Save that and refresh. Go ahead and click this a couple times. Open up the log. Oh, and nothing happened. Let's see. Oh, no. We're not getting any error. Oh, yeah, we are. Undefined function data. Oh, that should be date, not data. Just a couple times, and now let's look at the log. There you go. So now we're spitting out information here. However, I'm utilizing a free, sort of free. I think there's a limit on how many requests you can do, but I'm using this API to get the information about where the user is. And so we're gonna, let's see, data, get contents, and the URL of this API is HTTPS ipinfo.io, and we send it the IP address and the method we want it returned, which is JSON. So we're going to get that. That's going to send back a JSON string, and we're going to want to decode that. JSON equals decode, or JSON decode the data, and we're going to send it back as an array, which is what that parameter there states. Now instead of the IP address, we can get the JSON city and concatenate so we could look at this JSON object here in a second, so you can see where I'm getting this information. Let's go ahead and save that first and see if that changes what we're getting in our log. Yeah, okay, so now we're getting the state that we sent, the location, and the date. I'm going to go ahead and clear these out, or actually save that for a second, and we'll take a look at what this response is. So this is where I'm getting this information, city and region. So you can see who my internet provider is, and this is not my postal code, but wherever the information from this IP address is. So it's not completely accurate data as far as, but it's pretty close. I'm near Yoder, Indiana. Save that, and now let's go ahead and remove those lines. Then we can come in here and actually create the log entries. And we're going to do that. We're going to actually need to get the log also. So very similar to getting the current, we're going to go ahead and copy this, paste it, change this to log, and change the file to log. Open for read. And this time we're going to read the entire thing. We're going to do fread. And this function requires the amount of bytes that we're going to send, which means we actually have to get the file size of that file in order to get the entire. Looks like the stream might be dropping a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't stay that way. So we're going to echo that out. So then if we come over here, toggle.php log, there. So those are all the items, and they're separated. They should be on one line. Although I think in the yeah, they're in one line, but this is how it's being formatted in HTML. So now let's go back over here, and we're going to do another AJAX request for get current state. We're going to go ahead and kind of steal that and use that to update the log as well. URL is going to be toggle log. And we'll do a success. Return the data. And what we need to do now, since we've got this set of multiple lines here. Oh, yeah, looks like we're getting more people now. Cool. So we've got these lines. We're going to break what this returns up into an array in JavaScript. And to do that, we're going to use the split method. So we're going to do, we're going to call this lines equals data, which is all that data we just saw in the log there, dot split. And we're going to split it with the new line delimiter. So now we have an array of each line. And I want to flip them because the way they're coming in, I want the most recent one at the top. So we can either flip them here, or we could actually change how we're writing that file to prepend it instead of append it. But to make it easy, we'll just do lines dot reverse. So now our array is flipped. I'm going to set a empty string called result for use later. And we're going to do a for loop. And we're going to run through each one of these. So for I equals 0 until while I is less than lines dot length. So basically for every, it's kind of like a for each loop in PHP. So for every every item in the array. And then increment I by 1. So for each one of these, first we want to check and make sure that this isn't an empty string. So we'll do if lines and the current one we're on, which should be I, is not equal to nothing, or an empty string. Now we need to basically do what we did up here, only to get the individual pieces. So we're going to split each line up by using the dash as a delimiter. We'll make a variable and we'll call it cells. So it's each cell in the table equals lines, this current element in the array, split, and use the dash. So now we have each one of those pieces. Let's go ahead and make a variable called cell and make it equal to the beginning of a row. So actually this shouldn't be cell, it should be row. And Atom has a lot of great features. This particular feature gets a little annoying though. It doesn't catch that we're in JavaScript and goes ahead and auto-completes. Alright, so we start out the row. And let's see, now we'll do a for loop over each one of these items. So we're already using I, so let's go ahead and use x. X equals 0. And x less than cells length. And x plus plus. So for each one of these items, we're going to make a cell. And we're basically going to continue to add to row. Row equals row plus TD, which is going to probably happen again. And then the value, which would be cell current item, and we close that cell TD. So it's going to run through each one of those items and create a table cell and continue to append it to this row variable. And then after that, row will equal row and concatenate the closing TR. So that completes the row. And then let's see. We're still in a for loop. We're in this for loop, so we need to add to the result. Now, so result equals result concatenate this row. Tidy this up a little bit. All right. So it's going to go over each line, and during each line, it's going to go through each item in the line and build out a table row, and then add it to the result, which starts out empty, but as this keeps going, it keeps building on it. And then all we need to do, well, we need to actually add the log. Oh, we do have the log. Let's see. But we need to actually add the part of the log that we're going to edit or add to, which is the T body. And we'll give this an ID equals log. And now let's go ahead and define that actually up here where we did our light and button, just so we have it. And down here, after everything has run, log.html. So we're just going to basically rewrite the entire table body. There's other ways we could do this, but this is the quick way. Now let's see if all that stuff we just did worked. We have an error. This isn't a very intuitive error. Well, that's irritating. Oh, we're still inside the other Ajax. That's an issue. Success. Ajax. botched that up. Paste that back in. Looks like everything lines up. Refresh. There we go. There we go. So if anybody is actually on the video, which it looked like somebody was in Atlanta or near there, so they went through and did that. I have no idea why this button doesn't have the rounded corners like this one. It's interesting. But this is basically it. We've created the log, the light turns on and off. Or does it? Yeah, okay, took my eyes off the other screen. And I'm looking at my other card to make sure I'm not missing anything. Nope. So that is it. I will publish this, and I will take the cleaner version that I have over on my other screen and push this up to GitHub, which GitHub now has the components. I have a list of components needed with links to Amazon if you wanted to use that. I will note I get a little bit of Amazon spending money if you use these, but by no means are you expected to do that. If you want to buy really cheap and wait a long time on eBay or something, do it that way. But if you do want to help us out, that works. Actually, I think anything you buy after clicking on one of these links will give us a little bit of extra Amazon cash, which allows me to buy more components and do more videos. But that's it. I want to thank everybody for joining. Oh, this is the old one. And I hope you learned something.